Andrew Weissmann is former general counsel for the FBI. Christy Greenberg is the former deputy chief of the criminal division in the Southern District of New York. Both of them were in the court this week and on TV a lot, and both join me now. And Christy, happy Mother's Day to you. Let me just start by saying.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Andrew, I mean, Trump's defense spent over 3 hours, we all watched, trying to discredit Daniels over this alleged affair, far longer than their questioning of Pecker or Hope Hicks. It seems clear that they may want to use the scope of the Stormy Daniels comments to argue during the appeals process, potentially for a mistrial. But how concerned are you, having watched all of this week, about that possibility or their ability to make that argument?
Not concerned at all.
Good.
And I also think that the first step is, they only have to worry about that if there's a conviction. And one of the things that your intro really gets at is the irrationality of what is actually happening on the defense side here. David Pecker gave direct testimony, direct conversations with Donald Trump about the scheme. Hope Hicks gave devastating testimony from someone who's close to the former president about words coming out of his mouth to her about the scheme. Those are the witnesses that needed to be crossed. Those are the witnesses where you have to come up with something to say to the jury about why they got it wrong. Either they misremembered or they're lying. And yet the person who was subjected to this withering cross-examination was Stormy Daniels. And, frankly, her testimony, whether you believe it or not, is not relevant. We know that Donald Trump would want to suppress information about that was negative about him, such as what the doorman said about his having an illegitimate child. No one is contending that that was a true story, and yet it was suppressed, according to David Pecker, under this catch and kill agreement. So it was really odd to see the sort of hammer and tong cross-examination, which I think, by the way, largely fell flat. But it was sort of an odd choice to go after her and not the witnesses who are actually damaging.
Yeah, thank you for bringing my temperature down, as usual, Andrew. Sometimes you bring it up, but you just brought it down, so I appreciate that. So, Christy, let me ask you, I mean, the defense seemed to be fixated on denying the alleged affair. I mean, they went after her and after her and after her. Was that necessary? Was it the right strategy? What is your take on that?
It really felt so unnecessary, to Andrew's point. I mean, the cross was trying to argue that essentially being a porn star is the same as being a liar, with the quote that you mentioned, you make up phony stories about sex. That's what you do for a living. You're just a liar because you're a porn star, which that really failed. They also argued being a porn star meant that she was essentially a prostitute, or that she would just kind of be open for business, and she could never feel uncomfortable by any unwanted advances. And that also failed, and I think probably alienated at least 5 women on the jury. It was really, a pretty disgusting line of cross. I thought the only thing that she was somewhat effective at is arguing that Stormy Daniels was really primarily motivated by money to sell her story. And to that I say, so what? I still believe that the encounter happened. And I also believe that she wanted to make money from it. I mean, is a guy who's, the song to his reality show was for the love of money, is he really going to ask a jury to think that she's a liar because she had a reality show and wanted to make money from it? I mean, he can't say, oh, she's hawking candles, don't believe her, when he's out there selling Bibles.
Yeah,
so it really... I don't think they really scored points. If anything, I really do think that they alienated some jurors with this cross-examination.
That's a pretty rich argument. I love how you phrased that. So, Andrew, Michael Cohen is, as we've been talking about already, one of the state's last 2 witnesses. He's taking the stand tomorrow. There's been a lot of hemming and hawing of what this will be. If you're the prosecution, there's obviously a lot of details he knows, but kind of what are you worried about if you're the prosecution?
Cross-examination. And, I listened to Lanny Davis, and, if what he expects happens. I got the sense more that that's what he hope happens, then we'll be fine. But he needs to maintain his cool. He needs to not be thin-skinned. He does have some areas he really does have to worry about in terms of answering questions. You mentioned one, which is, his having lied to he says he lied to a federal judge when he pleaded guilty, and he has to own that. And that, by the way, was not a crime. That's not something he did because of Donald Trump. That was something he chose to do. He's also going to have to answer why he tape recorded some conversations, but not other conversations. That's an effective line of cross-examination. And he just needs to be, frankly, like Stormy Daniels, which was smart, careful, and unflappable. I mean, as Christy and I observed, she got better on cross-examination. She was humanized, and you saw just how effective she was, but she was unflappable, and that's not a characteristic that people really associate with Michael Cohen.
Not typically. Andrew Weissmann and Christy Greenberg, thank you. And thank you. When people see you on TV all the time, both of you, they don't see all of the questions you answer to all of us in the green room and on text and on phones when we're trying to explain all of this. So thank you so much, both of you. We'll be watching you this week.